Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Solutions. I'm your host, Hunter Pettis, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. As always, we want to use this time to talk about risk management topics at a very basic level in a way that is accessible and practical. Today, we delve into the world of hazard management, encouraging you to step lightly as we discuss the common causes of slips, trips, and falls. We will spend time with my guest today exploring practical tips to prevent these accidents. We'll talk about common risks that we've seen throughout the years and how you can ensure your church can stay on your feet. Now, I know that might sound silly, but when you take a moment to look at all the ways accidents can stem from slips, trips, and falls, it can create some serious repercussions. But before we get too far, I want to introduce you all to today's guest. She's one of ARM's distinguished account executives. She's been with ARM for 5 years, a professional that has a plethora of insurance designations, the AINS, the ARM, the CPCU, just to name a few. She's predominantly facing clients and frontline ministries either through direct interaction, training, claims, and risk scenario conversations such as these. She's fluent in 4 languages. She's a mother of two and loves photography, flower design, and reading. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Bianca. Good morning,
Thank you,
Bianca.
Hunter. It's a pleasure to be here. I am very delighted that you chose me for this task, and I believe I have a wealth of knowledge and experiences that I can share and we can use to highlight the importance of keeping the premises of our churches safe.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you here. I know you are a wealth of knowledge and stories that you can share with our clients today. So we look forward to having this conversation. When it comes to slip, trips, and falls, it's one of our leading causes of costly accidents with the churches, schools, camps, office facilities, you name it. A lot of these accidents can result from, I know, slippery surfaces. Even myself, I've experienced going uh, to an office building during the winter and in the parking lot not being salted properly, could have easily gone into a much uh, different direction. I managed to keep my balance, but uh, it's easy. It's something that's overlooked a lot of times. And just in general, what has been your experience, maybe even some stories that you've heard regarding slip, trips, and falls uh, since you've been with Aaron?
Yeah. So, just like you mentioned, slips, trips, and fall are the leading general liability claim that we receive at in our files. This is very frequent and we do not talk about it enough. And the great thing about this type of claim is that it can be prevented. This is a situation that can be totally avoided. But for that, we need to be intentional. We need to have that person that is designated to um, watching the area, taking notes, making sure that everything is in a working condition to prevent these types of incidents. And being one that happens very frequently, that means there are also many causes that contribute to this type of injury, this type of loss. So when we talk about slips, trips, and fall, we look at it from two perspectives: the ones that are totally preventable and the
Mhm.
ones that are purely accidental. And those are, for example, somebody uh, walking too fast down the stairs, they miss a step, they fall, they hurt themselves, or they lose their balance, right? Or somebody who is running, they shouldn't be running, but they're trying to get from one point to another, they want to do it fast, they run and they lose their balance and they fall. Or somebody tripping um, on somebody's foot or something that obstructs their way. So these are totally accidental, right? These are not things that you can prevent. But what I want to talk about is the situation that we can totally control.
Mhm.
And we can do that through monitoring, through consistent inspecting, to making sure that we have that person that sole job is to make sure that we do not give rise to these kinds of situation. So I'm going to give some examples for this category, the ones that are totally preventable. For example, slipping on steps that are slippery, that are worn out, and they can easily cause somebody to slip and hurt themselves. And how can we prevent that? Non-slip material, fixing the steps that are chipped or broken, having a mat on the steps, making sure that
Mhm.
mat is not moving, or slipping on wet floor, right? When we have a wet floor, make sure that that area is contained, that there are signs, that you direct traffic away from that hazard that you just created by having that floor wet. Another example is tripping on electrical cords. How many times we see these rogue electrical cords running from A to B and are a serious hazard. And um, another example happened outside of our churches. We are looking at our sidewalks. We have people who get injured on the sidewalks because we fail to maintain them, to keep them sanded, clean. We do not fix potholes or, you know, tree roots. Sometimes they lift the pavement and they cause cracks and unevenness in the pavement. And it doesn't take a lot for somebody's foot to get caught, causing them to lose their balance, trip, and fall. And when we talk about slips, trips, and fall, you wouldn't think of um, a very high impact injury, but it can lead to a lot of serious injuries. To name a few, you have fractures, you have dislocated knees, hips, shoulder. When you have a fractured hip, you can imagine the length of time it'll take for that person to get restored, to name one thing, but also the financial implication to get them restored. So there are many implications that we can control through monitoring, through keeping our premises safe. And I want to take the time to give some examples of high impact losses that could have been totally prevented. So, picture this: we have a Sabbath service that have ended, and everybody is moving towards the fellowship hall that is in the basement. And we have a very elderly gentleman trying to get down the steps and go to the basement. And of course, he slips and he falls, and there was no railing. And in an attempt for him to steady his foot, he grabs his spouse that was behind him, and they both end up falling down the stairs, severely injuring themselves, right? And when this loss happened, we had an adjuster visit the area, and they visited the steps where it happened, the accident place, and they noticed that there were signs that a rail used to be there. And they asked them, where's the railing? What happened here? And they said, well, the railing is in the attic. We chose to take it out so that we can allow for more space because the pathway is very narrow. So
Mhm.
here we have a clear example where we failed to provide for that added safety. We needed a rail. We need a rail to have for people to grab onto and steady their foot in case there's something. It wasn't there. It was just removed. So another scenario is we had a claim where people tripped on lifting carpet or a missing tile. You know, their foot gets tangled in the fabric and then they end up falling. And the problem is when they do end up falling, they do not fall in an area that's free of obstructions or debris. You have chairs, you have tables, you have things with sharp objects, you have a concrete floor. So the impact can be very, very significant. And all of these are totally preventable. right? All we need is somebody whose sole mission is to ensure that we do not have these hazards that will give way to these injuries to our congregation. So, and there are many. If you look at our loss history on our churches, the majority is because of these slips, trips, and fall that are totally preventable.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of great examples. I know that there's, sometimes it could be hand railings or hand railings missing from baptismal tanks or uprooted potholes in parking lots and things of that nature. A lot that we've come become accustomed to keeping an eye out for. That kind of bears a question for me as an account executive. How has your view of risk management changed when it comes to these things? Because when we think of individuals at the church, you're going to Sabbath school, you're going to um, Wednesday night prayer meeting, Vespers, whatever it may be. These are things that you're not really paying attention to. So, as
Right,
a
right.
someone who's in the industry, who's in risk management, how has that changed your view? And what are maybe some encouraging things that we could give our clients to say, hey, although it may not be heavily on your radar, these are just, if you see daisy chained um, extension cords across the room, it's important to say these things and what it could potentially lead to. So, what is how has that changed your view being a
So you
risk
are right
manager?
about one thing. Um, when you are a risk manager, your radar expands and your eye gets trained to spot these things immediately. And before I was in this line of business in insurance to be a risk management consultant, I would I would not necessarily notice the ones that are not obvious, right? I would notice probably a loose, a cracked step, and I would try to avoid that. But I would not look for an electrical box that's exposed. I would not notice that the railing is not there. And being a risk manager, it makes me think of safety as a whole, not just for myself. As before, I would think, well, it's not my job. Um, I'm sure somebody will take care of it, right? I would think that somebody is going to fix that somehow someday, but I wouldn't see it as my job. Whereas now, I'm looking at the safety as a whole, right? As something that encompasses us all, and it will affect us all. So right now, my husband thinks that I am becoming too too intentional about safety because I am pointing
Mm,
out things in our household that could prove to be a hazard. And this is exactly what we need for a church. And we need somebody who wants to find these things, even if they're not obvious. They want to get a guideline, a worksheet, and check these things off the list that they are in working condition, that no remedies are needed, no recommendation need to be addressed. So like I said, a lot of the things that I've mentioned are preventable, like the cord. You can imagine you don't have to be a very clumsy person to stumble and fall and injure yourself, because when you walk, you're looking forward, you're not looking at your feet, you're not looking at the hazard that are around your feet. But if you had a safety officer that walked around the premises before you had worship, he would be able to notice that the carpet is lifting over there and somebody can trip, and they could look at the area around it. If they were to fall,
mhm,
how how great the injury would be. Will they hit their head on that corner? Will they end up, so you want to have somebody who is thinking of the worst case scenarios. I know it sounds a little bit negative to think that way, but prevention is everything. Attention to detail is at the heart of risk management. So I found myself to be more careful and having a better understanding of how these oversights can affect the safety in our household. And also, when you talk about the church, when you, for example, are noticing a exposed electrical box or wires that look a little old or rusty or corroded, by taking care of these before something happened, not only do you make sure that something doesn't happen, your congregation doesn't get hurt, but you prolong the life of your contents, of your property. You keep everything in a working condition, and that is at the heart of risk management.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing you say, Bianca, is risk management is a holistic process. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. When we think about risk management or a safety officer, we tend to think that's one person. Well, it's
Mhm.
not. We want to think of it as a safety committee that is spearheaded by a safety officer. But we all have a part to play, and the safety officer cannot do it alone. And we want our pastors to focus on ministry, to focus on what they do best. And that's why it's important that they form that safety committee, that they have these meetings and they talk about child protection, they talk about maintenance, they talk about emergency preparedness, they talk about planning all these things and being prepared ahead of something happening. Because you can imagine, if you are prepared and you have a plan in place and you have a designated person ready to respond, should something happen, let's say you have a hurricane or earthquake or an active shooter situation, you will not have chaos because you have planned these things. You have found your people that are going to be responsible and know what to do, and they will lead the congregation to safety, and they will take the necessary steps to make sure that we avoid a catastrophic situation, that we contain the damage as much as we can. So that's why it's important that we are all involved, from the pastor to deacons, elders, even greeters at the church have a great responsibility. Not only will they make congregation feel welcome when they come to church, but they have a duty to scour the environments to see who's coming in, to notice items of concern, maybe an unruly person, maybe somebody who seems agitated, and just address that situation as it happens, report it immediately to the church staff, to the elders, to the deacons, to the pastor, so that we are in this together. We are not taken by surprise.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So, when it comes to slip, trips, and falls, maybe for our audience, which one or a few have you seen the most, and I guess how best could clients prevent the most common slip, trips, and falls, the ones that
Okay.
we see the most?
The ones
If
we see the most are the ones that involve stairs, right? Going downstairs. So, what contributes to these types of injuries is railing missing, poor lighting, or cracked steps, or that non-slip mat that is on stairs is not there or is torn. So that is one. Injuries
Mhm.
happening on steps. A second one would be injuries that happen on the sidewalk, because a lot of the times we pay attention to the inside of the church, but we do not pay as much attention to the sidewalk, to the outside of the church. And that is our responsibility as well. So we see a lot of slip, trips, and fall, especially in the states that have more wintry weather, like the Northeast, the Midwest, the northern states, Canadian states, Canada and Canada. So slip, strips, and fall that happen outside, and that happen due to ice, sleet, and snow. So we have to be very diligent in removing that ice, de-icing, adding sand, and that is, it can be tricky sometimes because you have removed the ice, you have snow, we have put sand, but then it snows, it melts, and then it becomes another hazard. So you require continuous monitoring of that sidewalk in those months. So it's important that you have somebody that is not only watching for the safety of the inside of the church, but also on the outside. We have a lot of injuries happening in the parking lot as well for the
Hmm.
same reason: ice, sleet, snow, or cracked pavement on their way to the church. They slip, trip, and fall on those areas. So we need to look outside the church as well.
Hmm.
And another one happens due to the person's own, I'm not going to say negligence, but circumstances. They lose their footing. They they slip. It's just an accident. But then
Hmm.
again, if you had a railing, then there's something to get yourself steady onto, right? So these are the most prevalent, the ones that we see the most. And we do see sometimes injuries that come for volunteers who participate in work bees, and they when they are painting the church or fixing the ceiling of the church, they get up on the ladder and they end up hurting themselves. So this is a topic that we could address in a different podcast, or to elaborate on how to work with high risk activities with contractors, when to hire one. But we see a lot of injuries happening to volunteers who participate in work bees and injure themselves because they are elevated, um, cleaning or painting or fixing ceilings. So that are the top three that we see the most.
Excellent. I really relate to the one when you just we were talking about the parking lot because I was um, arriving at a meeting and the parking lot itself had been shoveled and the plow had come by and everything. So it looked like everything was safe and
Yep.
salted. But the moment I stepped out of the car and I almost slipped and hurt myself pretty bad, but I was able to catch myself. And it's that black ice essentially will it's
Yeah.
something that can happen. Even just there's another one that came to mind. You mentioned accidental that slip trips and falls where I was walking out and completely didn't see the drop and again almost lost my balance, fell out. So sometimes it can be a result of your own negligence, you not paying attention, and other times it can be something that is preventable. Ultimately, like you said earlier, it's a holistic process, it's a team effort. So to be able to keep all areas of the church grounds safe, you need the support of pastors, elders, the church board, its members. In a way, we are all risk managers, is what I'm hearing. We have
Yeah.
to pay attention, keep our eyes open. We want to keep our churches safe. And so you mentioned some of the things that can be done already, and you also mentioned safety officer. So could you kind of elaborate a little bit more on the role of a safety officer and how they can provide practical leadership in addressing some of these issues?
We talk a lot about safety officer and what their role is. And we tell our pastors that it is hard being a pastor because you have to focus on ministry, and you have to focus on safety, you have to focus on legal liability, and there are many things that can take away from your ministry. So, what better plan to have than having a safety committee, right? And you don't have to have many people, a lot of staff to create your safety committee. It can be you as a pastor, but you need to have a safety officer. It's important that you have a person whose whole job is to make sure that your church is safe, because you cannot do this alone as a pastor. You cannot spearhead everything, and it's important that you delegate these important tasks to a safety officer, a risk manager of your own. And their roles will be, for example, self inspection, evaluation, walking around your premises, both inside and out, with a clipboard, checking things off, making sure that they look as they should. At Adventist Risk Management, we have resources for you. You can download these worksheets so that you can use them immediately. We want to make it easy for you to have a safety officer to make their job easier. They will be tasked with security. They will make sure that the areas are properly lit, that they do not have bushes that are not trimmed, allowing um, perpetrators to hide in there to do anything that they shouldn't be doing. You know, further to vandalize your church or break in. They should be responsible with emergency plans. They should be the ones knowing what to do, who the designated personnel is to assist in emergency preparedness, and they should know what to do in each situation. And again, we have resources for them. They should be tasked with activities and transportation. They need to know um, what is necessary when you have an activity planned, especially with children. We have a lot of ministries that are geared for our children in our churches. We do a lot for our kids. And they need to know what is expected of our church to do. You need permission slips. You need medical authorization form, consent for treatment. You need to know transportation. You need to know what the limitations are, who your drivers are. Um, what happens when the volunteers use their own vehicle. So there are many things that the safety officer need to know. They need to be trained in child protection. Yes, even safety officers need to know what our church manual recommends in terms of child protection. And of course, maintenance. This is their number one job. Incident response. When something happens, what do you do? Where do you go? What form do you fill out? Who do you contact? And when you think about all the things that I've listed here, it can sound like a lot. Where do we get all this information? Well, we have that for you. We have risk training centers. If you go to our website, to the risk training center, you can make an account, log in, and take the training. It is available in English and Spanish. We're working to make it available in other languages like French and Portuguese. And if you take it in one go, it will take you 2 to 4 hours, depending of your understanding level of, or if you have difficulties. But it's easy for you to get valuable information and resources in one package. We have modules that address every responsibility that I listed. And if you have trouble understanding or getting forward from one module to another, we are here to help. We would be more than happy to answer your call and guide you through that process. And the best part about it is that not only you will become more knowledgeable of what risk management at a church level is, but this will help you in your personal life, in your own household. It will open your eyes to risks that you weren't even aware that are there, and they are very great. So it's very beneficial. Like I said, it's on our website, Risk Training Center. We have courses for pastors, for safety officers, and these courses are made as a result of our interaction with you. We meet our safety officer and they ask us, how can we get all this in one package? So I'm here to tell you that we have it. It's on our website. And if you are passionate about risk management, then your congregation will join you in that way of thinking. If you are proactive, if you are intentional, your congregation will follow.
Awesome. You mentioned a few. You mentioned a self inspection form, and tying the early part of our conversation together. What does that look like? If I'm going around my church, I notice a few hazards around by going through the self inspection form. Which also the question is, how often do I should we be doing this? But if I've noticed a few things from the self inspection form, what's kind of the next steps after I notice something like that?
That's a great question, Andrew, because we talk about um, touring the property at least once a month and checking things off on the inspection form. And the inspection form is very comprehensive. It will look at both inside and outside. It will look at your gutters. It will look at your draining system. It will look at the electrical system, HVAC system, a lot of the things. So, of course, it's important to walk around and cross off what is in good standing and what needs remediation. But it's very important that when you have found something out of order, that you do something about it, that you fix it. Because what good will it do if you discovered it, but you just left it there, right?
Mhm.
Allowing it to become further decayed, and ultimately breaking down, causing either a fire or another large loss. So it's important not only to detect these hazards, but also to do something about it. For example, we survey our properties. Every 5 years, our properties are getting surveyed. We have a certified surveyor coming to your properties, and they inspect everything. And at the end of the survey, you get a report. And that report will tell you items that need to be remedied. It's very important that you look at those items and that you do fix them. Because if we do nothing about it, that makes us negligent. And when we have a slip, trips, and fall at our church, and there's going to be an investigation, how did this happen? And if it's proven that it happened because you failed to provide for a safe environment, and especially if that failure was gross, the courts will not look favorable on our church. W- uh,
Yeah.
there could be punitive damages, there could be all kinds of legal implication that will make the loss much larger, a loss that we could have totally prevented.
Yeah. And just for reference for our listeners, you mentioned that we survey our properties every 5 years. So that's through a vendor that we use, Verisk, and that's slowly trickling into Canada as well by for our vendor there, Opta. In between time, the self inspection its form is something that clients can do for themselves, and it helps just as a review. Have we addressed all the hazards that we've noticed outside of the years that we're being inspected by the vendor? Um, and that adds to that holistic process that we were mentioning earlier, where you receive something from a Verisk or an Opta. They list hazards. They may also allow you to know whether you're underinsured or insured properly. It's a team effort. So when it comes to the self inspection form in and of itself, or the safety officer, I should say, um, is this just something that one person at the church does by themselves? Do is this a group of people that should be taking account of this, or what does that look like? I know you mentioned that this is a team effort, but what is that? What can you explain a little bit more about what that looks like as well?
Yes. So we talk about providing for safety at our churches, and we talk about pastors and safety officers, but at the end of the day, they cannot do it alone. This is not a one-man job. uh, Protecting people and property requires a team of people, so it's important that you look at forming a safety committee that will have your pastor, your safety officer, your church treasurer, Sabbath school teachers, youth leaders, and facility managers. All of these people will form the safety committee. And of course, the safety officer can walk around with a self inspection form and check things off the list, but everyone can aid the safety officer in noticing things. For example, the Sabbath school teachers can look inside their Sabbath classroom and notice that there are hazards there, like a wire or electrical outlets that are not capped for the smaller children classrooms. Or everyone can look at the area where they work, where they minister, and find irregularities that they could communicate to the safety officers and have these addressed. So, just like you mentioned, this is a holistic approach, and this is not a one man job. And if it starts with a pastor, actually, we need to have a pastor that will spearhead this and form a safety committee, designate its members, and delegate and become united on the front of safety. Who is responsible for what and what do we do? But it's important that we do something about it. So together we can provide for the safety of the church through our safety committee.
I really like that. United front on safety. I like that. Um, and that gives a good idea of where to start, starting with the safety committee, safety officers, going through self inspection. A lot of this information, as you mentioned, is on our website, um, and that gives a good idea of the direction that we should take. So, with all those things said, we've talked about the leading cause of costly accidents at our churches and what they are, how to identify them, like, and how the addition of a safety officer can help respond to these hazards. So we don't really want to sign off on that note and leave you all kind of guessing with information. So I guess we really want to give you a call to action. And what does that look like, Bianca? What's some things that if I go to my church this Sabbath and want to get started and want to make sure that our congregation is as safe as possible, what are some things that we would encourage our clients to do?
If they are not sure on how to start a safety committee, they can contact their conference or they can contact us directly. They will have to find the account executive that is managing their territory, and we can give them resources on how to start your safety committee. Not only do we have um, articles that have been written by our account executives to aid the churches in this aspect. But like I mentioned earlier, the Risk Training Center is a great place to start. It has all the information in one place. And the great part about this that it's not geared only towards safety officer. It can be taken by anyone, by the treasurers. It can be taken by the facility manager, the youth leader, the Sabbath school teachers. Anyone can access this information. So contact your conference or contact Adventist Risk Manager Management. Your the account executive that's responsible for your area, your conference can help you find who that person is, and we will be able to equip you with resources and aid you in how to get your safety committee started. But like I said, I really encourage you to do the Risk Training Center. And of course, whenever we have to study something, we become overwhelmed. Oh no, this is going to be a lot of information. It's going to be difficult to understand, but I want to tell you that it is not difficult to understand. It is written by us in concert with you. We have used terms that are very easy to understand, and these are situations that happen in our churches. So it's specifically customized, designed for a Seventh-day Adventist church. And like I said, if you want to take it in one go, it will take you 2 to 4 hours. It will get you certified in risk management for your church. You'll receive a completion uh, acknowledgement at the end, but it will widen your horizon in terms of risk management. It will make you more aware, more self aware, and it will make you see hazards that you haven't even considered. So I have taken the course and it has helped me, and I am pretty sure that it will help you tremendously.
That's excellent, Bianca. I think that gives our clients a great, or any of our listeners, a great opportunity, a good idea of where they should start. We've discussed slip, trips, and falls, and some of the biggest causing leading factors that cause slip, trips, and falls. We've explored what safety committee is and safety officer and their role in leadership and how they can assist in these efforts to best protect and ensure safety at their local entities. Ultimately, I know it's a holistic approach and process, which you've also mentioned. And this puts a lot of things into perspective when it comes to better managing and having a strategic risk management plan at your churches. We want ultimately between our churches and Adventist risk management, we want our churches to be safe places for both new and returning members. Hopefully this means that after you've listened to this episode, that you take this opportunity to promote safety and risk management at your churches, which we've been really excited to talk about today, thanks to my guest Bianca. She's a wealth of knowledge. Hopefully, for I don't believe we mentioned it earlier, Bianca, but I know you serve as account executive for a few locations. I don't know if you want to share that information, but there are other account executives. So if Bianca doesn't happen to be your account executive, make sure that you reach out to the appropriate account executive, and they too can assist you in the same information that you're looking for regarding slips, trips, and falls, or any other hazards. Finding self-inspection forms, the Risk Control Center. As Bianca mentioned, we have info sheets on our website, articles, videos, and the online course itself at your disposal to help you with your risk management journey. I want to again thank you so much, Bianca, for sitting with me today, having this conversation. I really thank you for that and your wealth of knowledge and expertise that you've been able to provide for our listeners today.
Thank you for having me, Hunter, and I'm looking forward to receiving calls or emails from my pastors and safety officers. I serve in the Atlantic Union Conference, Mid America Union Conference, and the SDA Church in Canada. So make sure you contact either your conference or myself if I am your account executive, and I will be more than happy to assist you in getting what you need.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much again, Bianca. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you for tuning in today to today's episode of Let's Talk Solutions regarding slip, trips, and falls. And until next time, stay safe.
Goodbye.